Hello everyone, my name is Sandra.
My name is Jen.
I'm Abby.
I'm John.
So how was your day, everyone?
My day was well.
Magnificent.
Oh, okay.
Magnificent. Tell
Okay.
us
No.
more.
Like that word.
Um, Not much happened actually. My parents came for like a bit for the like family friends weekend. Then we went to WPI because that's where my sister goes, and she was playing in the band for the football game.
Oh
And the
wow.
football
That's so
team
cool.
actually won, which
Hey,
is unusual.
There you go.
So that was pretty cool.
That's a great
I
day.
love it. Uh, my day was well. I had work today. No Saturday practice. Practice is over for softball. So exciting. I worked the men's soccer game. They beat Anna Maria 4-1. They were losing in the first half though, and going to the second half, they were down 1-0. Call it a comeback. It was really good. But now I fear I've fallen a little ill. Not
Oh
feeling the
no.
greatest, but I'm committed to this. I'm here, and I'm so excited to talk
Yes.
about the movie, the
Yes, you
film.
are. Yeah.
I was doing good. I went to work. Love that. So fun. I'm
I know
tired.
you do.
See my parents for like a tiny, tiny bit. That was awesome. Love them. That was fun. Now I'm
Annie
here.
Very nice.
and Sandra,
My yes, my day. My day was homework. Homework land. Working on
beautiful.
essays and stuff, so not
Academic
very
weapon over there.
exciting. Yes,
Mm.
academic weapon right here. But something more exciting to talk about is tomorrow I will be playing in the World Cup tournament held at the Dolan Field. So that's gonna be my day from like
That's
8
really
o'clock
exciting.
to 7 p.m. Just
Best of
soccer
luck
all day
tomorrow.
long. Yes,
And
thank you so much. I'm gonna be
Of
missing
course.
volleyball practice for it, so
No, as if I've gone, and as if it's not the competitive team that's playing anyway. But still, it's really exciting. Of
that is really exciting. Thank you.
course. You know what's more exciting?
What is
The Night of the Living Dead.
The Night of the Living Dead,
you beat me to
1968,
it.
directed by George Romero. This is the proto zombie movie, the proto modern zombie movie. They're called ghouls in
Dictionary
it
words.
though. hmm
Hmm.
And we're going to be talking about how it is. We're going to be talking about a lot of the form of the movie, not restricted to any specific category, just generally the film form, and how the form might have been informed by the low budget aspect of the movie, and also how maybe the low budget aspect of the movie, in conjunction with the form, might have created some unique ideas that would not have been present otherwise if it was a high budget Hollywood film. Um,
That was beautiful. I'm gonna give you props for that. Like that was a wonderful intro.
wow. Wow, thank you so
Of
much.
course.
So, I'm going to introduce what everyone is, unless we're going to be talking about 8 details of form, two from each person. And my 2 details are going to be the fact that when Barbara is escaping from the ghoul in the opening scene, the car is dented. The dent in the car like was already there, or it was and the shot where it's rolling down the hill past the tree. It dents without hitting the tree, or like the dent is already there. There's no like action. They don't like make contact. We watch it just kind of go past. And my second detail is later when Barbara makes it to the farmhouse, and it is from the inside of the house, it's like pitch black outside and it's dark, but then the exterior shot, it's very light outside. And then there's just kind of this back and forth until it's like light outside from the inside and then dark outside from the outside. And there's a lot of very like incongruent shots and times of day used for that.
Mhm. Um, my two details are the first one is about object selection near the beginning of the film. It's I'll talk more about it when I get to it, but it's basically just there's a certain object picked in the beginning, like once Barbara gets inside the house, and this certain object like makes the house feel more lived in, and we'll get there. And then the second one is the camera angle when Ben shoots Mr. Cooper. Like you don't see the gunshot the gun, like the wound, the blood, any of that stuff, because it's most like the camera's mostly on Ben. And so when he shot, you only see like the smoke of the gun, which indicating that like he was shot, but you don't see the extent of the injury, which like saves time and energy on special effects, and also like it leaves more up to the imagination.
I'm going to talk about one of the ghouls' costumes as an example of kind of the overall zombie costuming and the simplicity of that. And then my second detail is going to be focusing on the scene where the car catches on fire and the cut that's used to exclude the exact details and editing that would be needed for the special effects of the car.
And the two bits that I'm going to focus on are like at the beginning of the movie when Barbara is running from the ghoul into the house that most of the movie takes place in, and towards the end of the film when Helen is in the basement and getting stabbed to death by her daughter. Yeah, so at the beginning of the movie, like when they first encounter the ghoul, he's kind of chasing Barbara and she's running away, and she's running to this house. And I don't know if it's necessarily true for like that whole chase sequence, but at least for like towards the end, I noticed there was no like Foley sound effects added in. It was just the score. Like all you heard was the music as she's like running through leaves and stuff and yelling, presumably. Like you'd kind of like expect to hear all these sounds, but you don't hear anything coming like from that. You just see her running and there's like music playing intensely as she's running away. And I think like, yeah, that was probably a decision made due to the low budgetness. Like it was just like you're just saving time, money. Like that's a whole bunch of sound effects that you don't need to make anymore. Like that would have been a lot of work, like getting all the footsteps, like running from point A to point B. Like that's a lot of ground to cover. Like that's probably a lot of time that would be consumed making sound effects for just that scene. And that's probably why they just were like, let's put the score over it. And like, that's just going to be what plays while she's running.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question though. Do you think that like spending the time and the money to add in those like footprints and those like effects, would that have been one, immersive, or two, like just a better movie watching experience if it was in there versus the score? Or do you think it wouldn't have changed like how you felt watching it?
I think it probably would have been more like immersive just because like you're more, it feels more real, like you're hearing every sound effect being made. I don't know if I'd necessarily say like better or worse. Like it would just be different. And I think like generally one assumes like, oh, we need to put in all the sound effects, and like that's kind of probably where they were at. But then they were like, oh, we can't really do that. Like I think they made that decision based off of the low budgetness. I don't think that was like just a stylistic choice for the sake of being stylistic. It probably was just used to like, I don't know, not cover for the fact, but like it kind of pushed them to make that decision.
No, I totally agree. I just wanted to see what you thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine using a studio, and like I feel like when I see videos of Foley being done, it's such a repetitive act to try to get the exact amount that I imagine it takes so much time. And like he was talking about in class at one point, the price for one of those like really nice ASMR microphones has to be insane. And then imagine that when it was this 1968, I feel like it definitely would be very, very, very expensive. So I think it is one of those things that chopping block for the budget.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the effect that that this decision has on the viewer is that it sort of detaches the characters and the actions from the landscape itself. It makes everything seem more like airy, or artificial is the wrong word. It's a fun word to use though, but it makes it seem like a more translucent, like, or like a backdrop. Like the characters aren't making an impact on their surroundings, because we can't hear it. We can't hear the footsteps. We can't hear like the scuffle. It just like so it feels like it's not exactly happening or it's not exactly like on the same like plane. Like it's like the actions that are happening or the things that are going on are happening like separate to the landscape that they're in.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That makes sense. I
And
can concur with
there's
that.
just like one point that I kind of was thinking about, like just about this specific choice was something like Professor Mannon talked about in class the other day was like the music is gonna like make you feel how it makes you feel. Like it's not really up to like the viewer. And I
Hmm.
think like that's probably contributed a lot to like because you get the feeling that the movie's trying to give you with just the music, but you
Just the
wouldn't get
music.
that with just the sound effects.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So it's
I get
probably
that.
that's probably why they chose to have the music, and it's like probably the like ultimate like ultimately the better, not necessarily better, but like more effective in communicating that feeling of like I don't know panic, like running away from a ghoul.
Hmm.
Like you would like if you just recorded her running through the woods and like just use those sound effects, like you probably wouldn't get that feeling. But like if you throw music on and there's no other sound effects, you still get exactly what they're trying to communicate.
Hmm.
Like the feeling is still there even if you can't like hear every footstep and
Right.
all that. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
basically all I have to say about that one. If you guys have anything you want to add or
sure. I'm trying to remember what the music exactly is. It's like a like like orchestral like string instruments and they're like I don't want to say they're like stabbing because it's not I don't think it's like the psycho strings. I don't think it's like but
Hmm.
it's like the strings are just very like intense and like dynamic and they're like going like or like they're doing um are they arpeggios? I can't remember exactly what the music's like in this scene, but it is very like classic, intense, like generic, like monster movie score. And I'm wondering if, and I don't think anyone here has the answer for it, if maybe because since this movie and like the form of this movie was so influential to like the zombie movies and monster movies in general moving forward, I'm wondering if the soundtrack they use maybe harkens back to like old like Hollywood monster movies, like pre-code monster movies, like score for that, or if it's like kind of its own thing or it's originating a new sort of style of music. I'd have to I don't I'm not equipped to answer that question right now, but I think it's important to consider maybe like some of the ways that the form has contributed to the film's legacy.
Yeah.
I think that was a super elegantly put point and could very well be an important question that I think none of us have the capability of answering.
Yeah.
Like it's such a good thought process, and like I really like how you're thinking about the film. I have no clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Does anyone have any last minute thoughts on the usage of only score in the soundtrack for this sequence? The first chase sequence of any of the ghouls. And well, I think that something about that is that the later in the movie with when the ghouls make their appearance again, a very important part in the soundtrack is their voices or like the sounds that they make. That's like really like that's essential to the identity of the zombie and how we understand it moving forward from this. And the first chase scene doesn't have that sound. It's just like it's just visual, and we don't get that.
Hmm. You bring up another great point, and I hate to be this person, but we spent a hot minute on this, and
Yeah,
I
you're
think we
right.
need to keep moving.
Okay, I can talk about my
Like
car
just
now.
a lot of
That's
other
like
things
an
together. Yeah.
hour.
That's right. So my first detail was shortly after this scene, Barbara gets away from the ghoul, hops in her car, doesn't have the keys. 'Cause Johnny's got the keys. And so she puts the car in neutral and goes down the hill. And we see the car kind of like go down the hill and it like crashes into a tree or kind of like rolls to a stop next to a tree. And it's like
Hmm.
very obvious because the camera's not like there's not really a cut. Like you see the car roll up to the tree and then just keep rolling, and there's just like a dent on it all of a sudden. And like we can see that there was no contact. And like there could have easily been like a cut or something, but we see that like the car's not made contact, and yet we are shown the results of that contact or the consequences of that contact. And it's obviously like a budget saving like expense, because they aren't gonna like actually like crash a car. It was probably or like they aren't gonna like take time to create a set piece with the car, since they're already doing like the big ass car explosion later in the movie. Like this is not something that they're gonna put too many resources into. So they just like dented up the car and had it roll by the tree and called it a day.
Mhm.
Do any of you guys have any thoughts about what that what that kind of feels like, or any other interesting observations about it?
I don't want to take up audio space again, but I'm gonna do that. I think it's just so, unless it's somebody else has something to say, obviously, because like this is just an observation that like clearly they had to do this take a couple times, and I guess that they knew that. So why go through the trouble of like it's such a small, minute like if you're looking for it, you'll find it because like we were looking for details.
Hmm.
But if you weren't looking for it, it's like a literal second where the car is in front of the tree before it hits the tree. And
Hmm.
that's when you see that it's dented beforehand. And it's just, again, one of those things where it's not worth the effort where it could be spent in other places to finish this film. And
Yeah.
I think I thought that was a really good example that you picked too.
Yeah, and I think the effect is kind of similar to John's first point, where it detaches the action from the environment.
Hmm.
And if we're going to talk about locality at all, which I think we definitely will and should, since everything about like the low budgetness of this movie is entrenched in the fact that it was created as like a local effort with local actors, local people, local sets. Everything was like from this place. And everything, like as a result, everything then is about this place. Like the subject is like the southwestern Pennsylvania. And so it's watching the environment be kind of taken apart as like a separate facet of the movie from the action that takes place on it. Kind of like it kind of I don't know, from Human's essay about this, about spaces and locality in Night of the Living Dead, he talks about the concept of anamorphism, which is
Hmm.
Lacanian, from one of his seminars. And the example, I'm not gonna try to explain it like straight up, but like the example that is used is this one painting, like almost a trick painting, but not quite, where it's these two figures are like sitting in like an area with like a lot of like objects around them. And but you see like at the bottom of the painting there's this big smudge, like just like covering everything. And if you stand at the right perspective, like really right perspective, like away from the painting, you can see that that smudge is actually just like a skull that was somehow by some technique painted, like stretched out, like as if like you take an image like on a computer and stretch it out. That's how it was painted. And
Hmm.
anamorphism is this idea that like these two like objects exist like together, but they're like totally oppositional, and that one cannot exist without like the other being compromised, but like they have to exist together for it to work. And that's kind of what's going on with this movie, with like the action and the environment, where they're clashing because they can't exist in the same spot and they can't be like understood in the same level, but they must exist together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that was perfect.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Um, I guess the big question, because I'm talking about effect still, but the big question is, how does what is it saying about locality? Like what is it saying about like this specific area? Or what is it saying about any specific area, that it must that like it like the movie is like, I guess, like in a way sort of like this painting an example of anamorphism because like like the experience of watching it when you're privy to the locality is completely different to the experience of watching it if you do not know anything about southwestern Pennsylvania. And
Hmm.
it's everything with like Mannon's essay talks about the usage of actual town names um from the area, like you for the like the TV broadcast when you see like these are the safe shelters, and you see the title of the news broadcast with Bill. I think his name is Bill. Bill's the newscaster. Like he's
Hmm.
just a local newscaster that people would recognize, but to anyone else watching it, it's like incomprehensible. It's just like this is just a person. This is just a news reporter, and it's like decontextualized. So the
Hmm.
experience is different for depending on like what perspective you're looking at it, or where you come from, or what your history is.
Hmm. Something about that, there's actually a detail that I found that didn't make the cut for this video because like it wasn't really like important and it was just a part of like it was a line in the script. And I think it speaks really well to what you're talking about because there's various points in the film when Mr. Cooper says, or he says it at least twice, in this part of the country where we are,
Yeah.
and he never specifies where
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
And I think as somebody who didn't know that it took place in Pennsylvania until I was told that, and then coupled with the like the various names of counties and towns, like I had no clue, and I think it was very intentional in that aspect, in that I feel like a majority of the audience wouldn't know where the film was
Hmm.
filmed or shot. And so like it could be, I guess not applicable to a wider variety of audiences, but like there's a part where they talk like about politics for like 6 seconds within the
Yeah,
film and
yeah.
like
They talk about how go.
like
Yeah.
and it could be very general to like it could appeal to a larger audience, and I think that was really smart when it came to a film like this, especially because of like the low budget. You don't know where it's going to be like screened or produced or like who's really producing this film at that point. Like it's very, I thought it was smart on their end for a variety of reasons.
I think
Yeah.
about not specifying the location as well and it being like a horror movie also works in a low budget way to make it scarier because you're not placing it as a certain location. Like this could be any neighborhood
It could
around
be
that.
your neighborhood.
Exactly. It could be
Hmm.
your neighborhood. And I think that's one of the things that they did that made it scary in a way that wasn't intentionally like effects or makeup or costuming. Like there was just subtle ways in which they were like, this could be your neighborhood or like um just certain things I think were interesting.
Yeah, and that's what the anamorphism is because for us, it's we're watching it and we're like, oh, that could be our neighborhood, and we translate our own experiences in our own context. But to people who are from southwestern Pennsylvania, it is their neighborhood and it is their
Right.
details, and it's just like a fundamentally like different experience when like you're watching like your life be like the subject rather than like kind of like this like uncanny like representation of what your context could possibly be like rather than like
Hmm.
watching it from with the context of southwestern Pennsylvania where it kind of takes you out of the movie like all these like cheap low budget formal details like seeing and observing like your locality your home like everything that you recognize coming in real life within the movie kind of takes you out and forces you to consider those aspects of your life, consider the locality, consider like all these little details that have built up your life and consider it like in stark representation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We
I
can move
think,
on to and
yeah.
listening was yeah.
My details up. Woo.
Yep,
Before I go into that, I want to pose a quick question to the group, which I didn't think about until we started recording.
let's do it.
But in term, not even in terms of low budgetness, but the house that the majority of the latter half of the film is set in, do we think somebody, like a crew member, owned that house? Where did the house come from? How did they acquire this house? Like is it, did they rent it? Is it somebody's? Where did she come from? Do we have any like
Yeah.
outstanding theories?
I think what Hugh said in class was that it was just like like an old farmhouse or maybe like an abandoned farmhouse that was like gonna be torn down. So they just kind of like
Right.
squatted in it or something. I don't know. They just kind of said, "Hey, can we go there? And I
Hmm.
guess they were like, sure. So they just kind of like lived in this house that was about to be demolished. I don't know if it actually was demolished or not, but
Could have
I'd
been.
be I think like it likely was if it was like on a path to be demolished and probably was during post-production.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know
Mhm.
if anyone has like access to the internet or to like an extra tab and can double check that while we continue the conversation. But
I can try
Yeah.
yeah,
to look someone
that's the
text.
context for the house.
Hmm. Thank you for clarifying that because I completely forgot that he talked about that, and I think that makes this point more solid than it was before. But
Uh-huh.
now we're at the point in the film where Barbara like runs into the house after being chased by the zombies or the ghouls, and she's looking out this window to go and see like how many were following her and whatever. And as she's looking out this window, there is this, and excuse my French, this ugly ass glass vase that is perpetually in the way of her as she is looking out this window. And during this whole sequence, like I was thinking, like it was just so in the way. And I
Yeah.
had to, and like your attention had to be drawn to it because she was like trying to like dodge and weave it as she's looking out the window. And it's just one of those things where like I've seen that thing in a Goodwill before. Like that, like it was
Hmm.
just like any other glass centerpiece. And I think it added to like it made the house seem lived in, like somebody lived here. And you learn later on in the film that they're like a family active or a woman actively owned that house before she died amidst this whole like zombie apocalypse. And it's just like this detail in particular was just one of those things that really forced me to think about that like this is they needed to make this house look like somebody lived here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that was one of those details where it's like it really like slapped me across the face almost because I'm like watching her bob and weave this big ass glass thing. And it's just like it forces you to look at it, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, John or Abby, do you have any thoughts on this big ugly glass thing?
No.
Um, honestly, like it's I don't know if it really adds anything of value, but I don't know why I just really like the fact that it's just like getting a bunch of stuff from like Goodwill to like make a house feel lived in because like I feel like that's like the best like way to do it. It's
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
because like you like the best way to make it feel like a real home is by getting things from like real homes. Like
Yeah,
I
it
feel
didn't need
like
to be
it's
over
so
the
much
top.
better. Yeah, so much better
Hmm.
than like designing a prop for like a set. Like you could just go get it, and
Yeah.
it probably is way cheaper. But
Hmm.
not probably, it definitely is way cheaper. But I don't know. I think it's like kind of cool. I don't really have much like
No, I
to
didn't even think about it like that. That's super. I love that a lot because like it already
Yeah.
that ugly glass thing had a home and it had people who used it for whatever its purpose was or lack thereof. And then it gets to be repurposed into this and it's helping not only like immerse the audience in this experience, but the producers and the people who are working on this film. Like it's like not a corner to cut, but like able to like work within their budget.
Yeah. I think it does bring it to a new level of like lived in, like you said,
Hmm.
especially if it was an old abandoned farmhouse. Like there's a sense that in creating this house that's then displayed in the film, there is a sense that you have to make it not abandoned and lived in. So I think they had to bring in a lot of things from that. And a cheap way is to find things that are already used or take things from houses that people, actors, anyone included in production had and kind of just place it in there. Um,
Right.
yeah, I think
Mhm.
that might also have happened with the costuming, is what I was kind of focusing on the ghouls costuming. And I think in a way it was super simple. Like one of the specifics that I noticed was when they were going to get to the car and there was a shot of all the ghouls coming at them. And I was looking at the different costumes, and one in particular was just a guy in a sheet. Like that's just kind of what it looked like to me. I think
That's
that
actually so real of him.
like
No,
either
like
is
I can't wait to be a ghoul and then put on my sheet.
right,
Yeah.
right? It was just something so simplistic. And we're thinking about it and being like, oh, in these future zombie movies, I feel like everything is so extremely detailed, or like everything's cut in a right way or added, like torn, or just in such an intentional way. But I think there's something so interesting in the simplicity of it and how it does make it scarier in a way because you cannot determine who is a ghoul and who is an actual like human, not ghoul, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it
Mm.
cuts down on the cost of costuming, but it also makes it so dependent on the actor's body language to determine the scariness of it and determine if it's a ghoul or not. It's something that you don't, I think, I'm rambling, but inherently, I think it makes it scarier. And you see somebody approaching and you don't understand if they're a ghoul or not until you can clearly see their body language and it's not based on
Mhm.
costume.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Oh, is there any ghoul in particular that like drew you to this, or was it just like the guy in the sheet, which
I
like is
think
so real, but
there was three that were like all next to each other. That it
Mhm.
clearly there was a guy in a sheet, a guy just in his boxers, and one that was just in a simple, I think, I think it was just a t-shirt and short. I don't remember the third guy, but I remember it was the guy in the sheet and the guy in the boxers. That I just remember being like, these are so simplistic and they're so effective.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things that like I feel like somebody could have just brought in a sheet or they went to Goodwill,
Yeah.
something, and
Or if not Goodwill, like maybe like even just their own clothes that they were like they
exactly,
Yeah.
just had. And
exactly.
I think this is an extraordinary point because there's because like you were saying about other zombie movies, other more recent or modern zombie movies. One second.
You can go do that. Uh, I'm gonna fill this void of
Hi.
silence.
I'm
Oh,
doing a
hey.
project right now, so
Sorry.
no worries. I will come out in like an hour or
Okay.
30 minutes.
The door was like open. We just walked in. I just wanted to say hi to you. 'Cause I'm
Hi.
not staying for like too long.
Abby,
But
go
Yeah,
yeah,
no
pee right
sorry.
worries.
now.
I'm so happy
So
to see
bad.
you guys.
What's up, guys?
Bye bye. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah, I was gonna
Anyway,
type. Anyway, enlighten us.
okay. So there's like this anonymity to like zombies in like modern movies where like they've been like almost like standardized into this like decomposed form or like their clothes are like almost like fused to their skin. You know what I'm talking about? I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
The Walking
Mhm.
Dead or like
Mhm. It's such a like
World War
archetype
Z
of what a
especially.
zombie should look like.
It's like barely even like a person anymore. Like it's been fully like otherized into like a creature
Hmm.
form where like the clothing, if there is any clothing, is like part of the skin, part of the body, and it's like a completely solid form. But in Night of the Living Dead, it's like everything is so specific and catered to each like individual ghoul. Like that it feels like this is like another like confrontation with the local. Like these are people with like specific or like were people with specific roles. Because we can see like there's like the like they're wearing different outfits and some of them like connotate like different I'm trying to remember. Do you remember any specific examples besides like the bed sheet or the boxers or like something where someone's wearing like a specific like article of clothing that might like connotate as like a career or something or like a role?
Oh, I got
Yeah.
one. There's a
Yeah.
guy in like a three-piece suit.
Yeah, a guy in a three-piece suit. That's
Like he
amazing.
wore that to his funeral. He was
Hmm.
dressed up nice.
So it's kind of like we're seeing since like these ghouls are like people like without desire, like people who've been like removed from their personhood. We just see the
Hmm.
roles, we just see the traits, we just see that which is local. It's the locality exposed and isolated through the costuming. And I think that's also true of the Goodwill, the big ass ugly Goodwill lamp thing, whatever thing you were talking about, because it's
So
like
whatever the fuck you were talking about.
whatever that thing is. It's like you said that it's like there in the middle of the camera, like in front of the camera,
It's like in your
blocking
face.
Barbara exactly,
Yeah.
and it's forcing you to confront an isolated and enlarged like image of like the local of a local fixture of a local or a local object. It's like, and I think I realized what I was trying to say earlier too with like the car thing, like when I was trying to describe like how the landscape is different. It's like the landscape is immutable in a sense. Like
Hmm.
everything happening in the environment and the place is like frozen in time. Like it's as if the land and the trees and like all these like structures, natural and man-made, have been like frozen in an instant, and everything that happens in the movie plays out over it, like it's a set or a stage.
Mhm.
Hmm. I was gonna take it in a completely different direction to be super duper quick. And this is fully almost 4 brownie points from Dr. Professor Mannon. Bring it back to the short film we watched on Thursday.
Yes.
Like, and he made a point to comment that like these are the whole wardrobe is just like these are these people's clothes. And it's just
Mhm.
one of those things again where you're not like cutting a corner, but you're like maximizing efficiency in this way.
Hmm.
And to go like to be strictly about the budget and strictly about like not even how this film comes off, but like what is something that we can do to get this film out and stay within certain parameters. And this was so, like it is nowhere near the guidelines we have for a zombie movie today, like by
No,
any means. Like the body needs to be
no,
decomposed, the clothes are on the skin, it's gross,
it's
but like that's what
nasty.
it does. Like that's its job.
Yeah,
And this completely subverts it, even though this was like not the blueprint, but she was the original.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's so like, how did we get here?
How did we
You
get to
know?
the point where like zombies are like a creature, like something that isn't? Oh my God, Abby, you've been taken. Abby's been taken by
Abby!
the ghouls are in Abby's dorm right now. Quick,
Ah!
someone call for
Start
help.
making Pennsylvania noises.
They're coming back.
Water.
I'm gonna
You're
go
in a sheet and
around.
boxers and a suit.
No, it's so
Do
funny.
it.
Sorry, brief sidetrack, but in Hugh's like essay, there's like this like extended sequence where he talks about like he like transcribes this scene between between Chief McClellan and like a reporter, and he like transcribes it so that like the dialogue is accurate to or like accurate to the sound of the accent. So it's just like borderline gibberish for the words,
Hmm.
just so that you can get across how the accent sounds. And it's so good. Like I highly recommend checking it out, if not for the analysis on locality, just so that you can see Hugh Manon writing words spoken by Western Pennsylvanian Sheriff McClellan,
How do you think he feels that we full name him at any opportunity?
who
You.
Sheriff
Humanin.
McClellan.
No,
Oh,
Humanin. Like we've all spoken about him at this point, I think. But we're just like,
yeah,
yeah, and then Humanin's essay, like
Human's essay.
do it out
I
of
don't know.
appreciation.
Maybe he's like the locality of our Zoom meeting that is
Hmm.
being anyway.
Anyway,
Um,
Sandra, I think we're back to you, babe.
we're back to me.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my second detail, and this one I was like I had so much fun with. But basically, Barbara makes it to the farmhouse. She goes inside, and it's really, really dark inside the house. It is like high contrast, low key lighting. Shadows are big, and they're like folding into each other. She's running around and she's like trying to work the phone, she's trying to find like resources, see what like the situation is, and she looks out the window, and the interior shot of the window is like pitch black, like you can see like foliage like covering the window, but beyond that it's just like there's nothing, you can't see anything outside the window. And then it
Hmm.
cuts to outside the window where she's looking, and it's like the ghoul, the guy ghoul from the beginning, he's just wandering around in broad daylight. And then like it's like, oh, okay, so that's something. And then like she looks again from the inside, it's exterior shot, same deal. It's like pitch black outside, and then like it cuts back again. It does it twice. Like this like completely like broken contrast between inside and outside. And
Hmm.
then she keeps walking around. She tries the phone. It's like a continued shot. Like time does not pass at all. I can't stress that enough. Like Barbara is doing the same actions like between all of these shots. It's like complete scene. And then she like looks outside the window again, and then it's like and then like everything is in order. Like it's pitch black outside and outside through the window. And I think that's like such a good low budgetness, because it also seems to be like avoidable in a sense, but like I think what causes is probably time constraint. Like you got to film when you got to film. Um, so it's like light outside, all of a sudden pitch black because we just had to get the scenes there. But I also think that it's sort of it like disrupts the what I was talking about before with the environment detached from the action by specifically showing us like a rupture in time or cause and effect, similar to the car, where it's like the day-night cycle is not in order. We're just moving through time in whatever way we want to move in. Whatever, like night, day, who cares? It's gonna be night the whole time soon enough because the living dead will be here. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really care to present this to present like a natural like sunset or a natural like procession of natural events. And I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I think it's interesting because I think there are films that don't follow natural progression of events, especially at a low budget. Like you said,
Hmm.
cost of time, labor, you got to pay everyone. As you mentioned, feed everyone, uh,
Mhm.
which that's very important. I
Yeah.
think there are some exceptions that you, as someone filming this and as someone editing it, you make the choice that people are not going to see it if they're not noticing for it. Because I know I've watched like films all the time and just not notice little things until you go back and you watch it a second time or you're looking for them. So I think sometimes it can be one of those things that's like benefiting. Is it gonna, is it worth the time? Are people gonna notice if you do were to do
Yes.
it?
Mhm. I personally, I love me a good continuity error. I think they're
Oh
very
yeah.
like, okay, maybe not love, but I personally, I think it really speaks to the priorities of the filmmakers. And like, so exactly like Abby was saying, like they have so many other responsibilities on top of just making the film. Like they
Hmm.
have to feed the actors, they have to house the actors, they have to house the equipment, they have to do this, that, like everything in their mom needs to be done during this film, you know, or
Hmm.
during the making of
Yeah.
any film. And so something such as like the daylight thing, it speaks to the constraint of the time. Like it reveals a lot as to the circumstances and the context in which that specific part, as well as the entire film, was made.
Yeah.
Like there was definitely a time constraint. Or not definitely, but like you can infer that there was a time constraint. You can infer that like this certain continuity was not in the forefront of their mind. And if it was,
Hmm.
like if this was a filmmaker that was paying attention to detail, which you would assume that they were, like they were willing to forego this. And why were they willing to forego this? And I think it
Hmm.
raises a lot of questions as well. But
Yeah.
I think I'm going to read you guys a part of a verse of my favorite song of the 21st century, In California, by prog folk sensation Joanna Newsom, that I think like it's like it's so perfect for this detail I'm talking about. I'm just gonna go for it.
mhm.
Um, it goes, my home on the old Milk Lake, where the darkness does fall so fast, it feels like some kind of mistake, just like they told you would, just like they told you would. And like perfect, some kind of mistake, night falling so fast. Very cute little tongue-in-cheek reference to what we're talking about with the Night of the Living Dead and continuity. But also, what that song is kind of about is this dissolution between the differences, or it's combining longing or desire for home with like a romantic desire for another person, and then combining that as well with like a desire for yourself, or yourself to be kind of like its own thing or own entity in relation to these other things, and yet still like falling back into home, wanting to go back to California, wanting to go back to where the night falls so fast it feels like some kind of mistake. And
Mhm.
I think that there is opportunity, which we won't spend time here doing it, but maybe for like any other discussion that anyone else might have. There's definitely cross-pollination between Joanna Newsom's In California and the formal techniques of Night of the Living Dead, about in reference to home, locality, and desire.
That was beautiful. Um, I got nothing else for that personally.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't think I do either.
yeah, that was
Well,
it.
then we're
I will.
Mhm.
That's just such a connection that I don't think a lot of people would think to make. And I would love to pick your brain about that, but that is not what we're doing right now. Um, that's a conversation over coffee.
Conversation
But
for
for
another
right now,
time. This
mhm,
conversation right now is going to be about John. John, you ready
Yeah,
for your
Oh
second
yeah,
detail?
of
enlighten us,
course.
John.
I'm so ready. So I'm gonna jump forward in the film a little bit. This is kind of towards the end. This is the scene where Helen is getting stabbed by her daughter. Um, Specifically, like when she's like screaming, you can see that she's screaming. I mean, she's being stabbed to death, but like
Naturally.
the screams, it's just kind of a bunch of echoey screams being overlaid on top of the scene. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can see like her mouth doesn't necessarily match up, and there's a lot more screams like playing in the sound than
Yeah.
they're like she's actually like physically doing. Like, and I think this was like clearly like it's a stylistic choice. Like it's not like it's trying to cover like discreetly like make her scream seem more realistic. But I think it was a stylistic choice that was probably made because of like the low budgetness. It might have been like hard to line up like screams, make them seem realistic, and rather than just like have some like ADR screams or whatever and like try to have them line up perfectly or have them not line up or have it just kind of look off or sound off and just
Mm-hmm.
make it not really feel right. Like they just were like, all right, let's just have a bunch of screams playing over this like scene. And I think it's probably because I don't know, because I feel like it would have been like it's a noticeable like obvious like stylistic choice at least to me,
Yeah.
but like it would have been just as noticeable and obvious if they just kind of tried to make it seem realistic and failing.
Yeah.
So they probably were like, all right, well, rather than spend a lot of time and effort trying to make this seem realistic, we'll just make this choice, have it just be echoey screams, and it'll be like noticeable that they're doing that, but like it's clearly intentional. Like
Yeah.
that's what they were trying to do. That's what they're going for, and it's not any less like harrowing. I guess I don't know what word to use. It's not any like less gruesome that she's being stabbed to death and like you hear echoey screams that like are just kind of playing in the soundtrack. I don't think it would have been any more gruesome or any less so if
Mm-hmm.
it had been like perfectly synced up screaming from the actress. Like I think the
Yeah.
same kind of the same point that I made earlier, like you get the same feeling across. Like it's the viewer gets what's happening. They get the feeling. It's like everything's being executed. Like all the feeling they're trying to give you is still reaching the audience. It's just through like a different way, I guess.
I think
For
that
sure.
goes back to what Jen kind of talked about with the priorities and like there was
Mhm.
an obvious, you have a definitive amount of money, a definitive amount of time, energy. And I think like you were kind of talking about, rather than trying to make it so perfect or being okay with it being imperfect, you just kind of take that choice out by swapping this in. And I think it does show their priorities and where they wanted to demonstrate.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
how the style does, it's a choice, but it also works as a benefit. And it also costs so much money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like I think if they did like try to be like, oh well, we need to have the character screaming because they're screaming in the scene. If they like were trying to do that and they just didn't have the time or whatever, like if it did end up being imperfect, you would kind of lose that sense. Like it
Yeah.
would still it would like kind of take you out of the
Yeah.
movie. Like you just kind of be like, oh, well, like I know that they're trying to scream, but it's just like not working perfectly.
Right.
Like it wouldn't be the seamless like I don't know
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
yeah, it just wouldn't be like perfect and it would like take you out and you wouldn't get the same feeling. It wouldn't be the same like sense of like, oh my god, she's getting stabbed to death by her daughter.
Mhm. It is this like very, very distinct moment of surrealism in the film, which I would not otherwise characterize. This is not a movie I would characterize as particularly avant-garde or surreal or experimental in many ways. But this one moment where like all of a sudden like the screaming is like echoing and like reverberating and like certainly not coming from any human being's throat that vocal cords that you like that would make any sense. It's a sound that you never hear in the movie before and you never hear it again. And I'm wondering if it's specifically because that one specific like kill where it's like a daughter killing or like a daughter in ghoul form killing her mother. It's like maybe especially perverse, and so is the sound. So is the soundtrack going to be. So are the sounds that we hear is going to be like monumentally like fucked up.
Yeah. And especially since like they spend the whole movie trying to take care of her and heal her, and then she just kind of boom, she kills her mom, like who has been sitting there by her side like the whole movie.
Right.
It's just like a really like particularly like gruesome kind of, I don't know, just sad moment, I guess.
It is really sad.
Mhm.
Jen, did you have a detail that was also like talking about gruesomeness in a way?
Say that all again. I'm so sorry.
Did you have a detail that was also, you were talking about a gunshot, right?
Yeah. Do you want to do yours first and then I'll do mine, or?
Yeah. So I was focusing on the scene in which the car is on fire, which I also have so many things about how just plot, you just left it next to the oil, but that's fine. The gas. But anyways, I was focusing on the cuts that were made and kind of the camera angle and the way that you seen them in the car together. I think it was Judy and Tom. Not Tom. Maybe Tom.
Tom.
The young couple.
Tom.
You seen them in the car together, and then it cut away, and then the next thing you seen was the car just a flash of light, and then the car was on fire. And you never directly seen any particular special effects. Like I feel like nowadays there would be a lot more detail in a current Hollywood film on the exact track of like sometimes you see the gas, like the fire going along the like line of the gas. Do you guys know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where, like the gas kind of thing
Yeah.
on the road thing goes, and that's a lot of times saying the thing. But anyways, you don't see any of that. Instead, you just see the flash and then the car on fire. And I think it does work in that you save money on the special effects, but I think it also works in a way that the producers knew you were kind of gonna piece together mentally what occurred, and also that in not showing the special effects, you are still gonna, like Humana was talking about with the horror film, you don't have to show everything. Like people will understand what happened, and also what people might imagine might also be more gruesome than what is occurring. And I think that was like a good example of that in how to make something scary, and horrifying, but also simultaneously how it does save money for the film.
Right. I think my last detail ties into that really well as well.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yes, ma'am. So it's not very close, moderately close to the end of the film. When Ben shoots Mr. Cooper, I forget his first name. He was
Harry?
too much of a a-hole to remember his first name, probably. Mr. Cooper. When Ben shoots him, you don't see the bullet enter Mr. Cooper. You just see the smoke of the gun and you hear the gunshot when it happens, but you miss the entirety of like the gruesome nature of Mr. Cooper getting shot. And this was probably done for a variety of reasons. To one, maximize the efficiency of like, how can we convey this point without like overspending our time, our budget, our like special effects resources when it could be used towards other things? Like, how can we maximize the efficiency of this? And two, I think it certainly plays into the whatever you're thinking, it's probably a little bit worse than what we're going to show you anyway.
Yeah.
And so like, because the human mind is it's a place where you can go. And so like I feel like horror films nowadays too really rely on goriness. It's either goriness or jump scares are both very common tools used to incite fear in an audience.
Very like
when
physical or physiological.
Yes, it's very like we're gonna show you this so that you get
We're
scared.
gonna like make your body physically feel something before your brain like loud noise.
No, literally.
Big lights.
When it doesn't have to be like that. And I think this one detail is a good example of how like we don't need to be this way. Plus, again, for brownie points, super duper quick, the gunshot, it's a diegetic sound that is seen that like you don't see, but it's heard within the film world. And I just wanted to
Very
throw that
good.
in that I know what I'm talking about.
You know what you're talking about. And
Hmm.
I'm gonna go on a step further, and continue your point, but I'm gonna talk about my favorite example of gunshot in this movie, and that is the final one when Ben is shot dead by the like the hunting party.
Hmm.
And I think it's just like such a like devastating instance because of how sudden it is and how we almost don't see it. Like we see it happen, we see like the gun being shot, we see like the window breaking, we see him crumple, but like we don't we like it's like there's like little milliseconds missing from it because it happens so fast that he's just like already on the ground before we even process it. And that just kind of leads into the final montage, which I was a little sad to see so many people leave so soon. Like as soon as they saw the credits start to roll up, everyone like half the theater just kind of got up and left. But I was fascinated by the credit scroll of which might have been, and I don't want to bring detail number nine, surprise detail nine, I guess, on the spot, is going to be
Hmm.
how like the final sequence of the movie isn't like his death, but it is this like scene of Sheriff McClellan and his hunting party like piling the corpses of the ghouls, or at least the people they thought were ghouls, and like bending mixed in with them and being burned in a pyre. And
Hmm.
I think that like it might be like we could talk about it in the context of a budget constraint that we don't see this scene as an actual scene. It's just still images with audio playing over it with the credits
Right.
going. Like that, like there's like certainly ways we can read like budgetary restrictions into the fact that that happened, but the effect of it is that it feels like we're watching newsreel footage, newsreel images, specifically newsreel images of like lynchings from like the early 20th century.
Right.
It's that exact same like technique or vibe. Like it draws you right back there on a formal level. You're there
Hmm.
like, and you automatically understand that, or at least I'd hope you automatically understand that like this is about lynching. You're supposed to be thinking about lynchings right now. You're supposed to be thinking about parties of like of local militants or like local forces backed by police murdering people without a second thought, without like any threat of like a retribution for their actions.
Hmm. Um, I have a really quick point I want to make, and then we can like be done. And it
Be
has
done, be
nothing to
done.
do
Yeah.
with like, yeah, it has nothing to do with like details, but it's simply just like the end of the movie when Ben does get shot. I think this is the scariest part because not even because of what happens, but it's the fact that Ben did, and this is pure plot. Ben did everything right and he still lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
makes it scary.
That's what makes it just so, yeah. It
Hmm.
really is like a, and it was like such an emotionally charged moment in the theater, and you can tell when people are watching a movie and they find something discomforting or something like does something to them that's like, uh-oh, that's bad. They laugh. People
Hmm.
laugh all the time watching movies that are genuinely uncomfortable. Like
Right.
go to a screening of Fire Walk with Me, which is probably my favorite movie or one of my favorite movies. And it's like a movie about like that recontextualize or not recontextualizes because you know that Twin Peaks is a show that like is concerned with sexual violence. But you kind of like are allowed to exist with that in the background. But when you watch Fire Walk with Me and it's all in the foreground and it's like the most horrifying like thing you've ever seen, the most horrifying movie about a father assaulting his daughter like
Hmm.
continuously. And but like if you go to screenings, sometimes like people will, because like David Lynch like exaggerates or like stretches out the emotion like through his surrealism, and like everything is like really grotesque and like not like anything you'd ever see in any movie. It's very different. So whenever these intense things are happening or like a lot of intense imagery is on the screen and intense performances especially, people laugh.
Right. I was gonna suggest we do our lighthearted fun, but I fear so genuinely that this has gen like been over an hour of us talking.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
who
I
wants to
can
close
say
it out?
I love you because I love you guys so much, and I had a fun time talking with you guys. And
And
I
I
think
do.
everyone,
This is great.
everyone brought tremendous details.
Mhm.
So This was Sandra Munoz.
I'm Jennifer Albano.
I'm Abigail Glynn.
I'm John Juliuson.
That's Francisco Goya.
David Bowie.
And that was Night of the Living Dead.
Beautiful.
See you next week.